Yo, Andrew Huberman just came out recently, within the last few months, a podcast episode on Keep Hammering Collective about his faith in God. This guy's a super smart scientist, and y'all know that there's often clash between science and Christianity. So this guy's a neuroscientist. Haven't seen this full episode or this full podcast episode, but I thought it would be great to chat about this and give you guys my initial candid commentary on it. Since I love God. So I love talking to people that do cool things and love God. That's what Conversations is about. So let's look at it.
When you're talking about the brain and all the, you mentioned it last night, and this had me thinking. It's like, when you think how all that works, I have to take an aside and say, how could that happen in nature without a creator?
Yeah, so.
All right, that was a bar out the gate.
And all the, you mentioned it last night, and this had me thinking. It's like, when you think how all that works, I have to take an aside and say, how could that happen in nature without a creator?
You're absolutely right. That is the setting stone of feeling God's presence. Like, that curiosity right there is what opens up the gate to let him show up in your life. When it's not all about you, it's not all about what you know, but submitting to a higher authority, a loving and genuine creator. And like, you look around your surroundings, look at your skin, look at your heart, how your brain functions. Like, that curiosity there is the snowball effect to God showing up in your life. So that's awesome that he said that.
Yeah. So, well, here's the thing. We know that the programs, meaning genes, DNA, and there's DNA, then there's RNA, and then there's proteins. And proteins are the action end of the game where
we all know the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. I'm sorry, I had to throw that in there.
They say, hey, like, grow over here, don't grow over there. Mm-hmm. Become this kind of cell, dopamine cell or a serotonin cell. We know that those mechanisms are incredibly well conserved from mice to humans. Now, certain things happen in the human brain that you don't see in other species, like the elaboration of the parts of the brain that are involved in context and planning, especially. But the memory systems, the ones that control hormones, breathing, heart rate, they're very similar. Not exactly the same, but very similar.
Okay.
When you start to study and understand brain development, as I did, or neuroplasticity, or dopamine, you have to, meaning, I don't care if you're an atheist, agnostic, or believer in creator.
Okay, first of all, what is neuroplasticity? Let's Google that really quick. Let's see. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change and adapt due to experiences. It is an umbrella term referring to the brain's ability to change, recognize, or grow neural networks. This can involve functional changes due to brain damage or structural changes due to learning.
Have to step back and just go, wow. Now, then, of course, development, as I did, or neuroplasticity, or dopamine, you have to, meaning, I don't care if you're an atheist, agnostic, or believer in creator, you have to step back and just go, wow. Now, then, of course, there's this difference among scientists as to who believes in God, who doesn't. I'll just go on record. I'm very comfortable saying it. I believe in God. I do. I think there are many things that science can explain. There are certain things science can't explain. But I'll even go a step further, which is that all the elements of science are entirely compatible with the idea of there being a God. And I'm not the first scientist to say this. I mean, Einstein believed in God.
He said that a lot of the layers of science are totally compatible with there being a God. So he said it. And this isn't to prove anybody right or wrong, but this is the true marveling of God. And Andrew Huberman is laying it down on the law, explaining his side of it. Like, this is the idea of marveling God's creation. He created heaven and earth, day and night, the sea and the land, the fish and the land animals. I mean, in the first book of Genesis. So he created Adam and Eve, and they were created in his image. And part of that image was the intricacies of what Andrew Huberman is talking about. I mean, neuroplasticity, dopamine, serotonin, all these different chemicals and hormones. Like, he's really going in.
Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychologists ever, clearly believed in God. There are many atheist scientists. There are agnostic scientists who are just kind of like unsure, right? And, you know, for me, I'm in absolute awe of biology. It's just incredible that we're sitting here having this conversation. It's language, that there are little sound waves that you're perceiving and understanding. I mean, it's just, and I think the brain represents the apex of incredible in terms of biology. Like, the heart is interesting, the immune system is interesting, the liver is interesting, but the brain is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the number of different ways you can move your body compared to another species. Think about what you did today. Think about what I was attempting to do today, right?
Yeah.
Spectacular. Think about technology. These lights, the, you know, Tesla cars, spaceships. I mean, the internet. I mean, unbelievable. And yet, oh, so real.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, we could talk a bit about how well, I'll just say this. Secretly, I've always prayed. I grew up in a split religion home. My family's like the UN. We've got people from Guatemala, Denmark, Argentina, New York. Like,
I mean, a lot of people are praying in secret. You know, Bible says, go in a room, you know, get on your knees and close the door and you know, be by yourself and pray. And so the streets can't see you shouting at the top of your lungs. Like, if you're new to your faith in God, like, you having that really quick conversation with him in your room when you wake up, before you go to bed, or you had a bad day, or you plop into bed and you're just like, oh God, like, thank you so much for life. Like, those little wins, they count and they add up. And that is the snowball effect to him, like, showing himself to you as you invite him into your life. Like, that is it's a two-way street. So don't get it twisted.
all the different political battles are in my family. Super left, super right, libertarians, lefties to the, it's crazy. Thanksgivings can be difficult.
Yeah.
But I'll say this, I absolutely pray. I absolutely love that the idea, but also what for me is really a deep belief, which is that we can't control everything. We're not in as much control as we think we are. And that the magnificence of biology and the magnificence of nature is, it's impossible for me to conceive how that could come about any other way. It just is. Now, yeah, I mean, I think that, full stop.
Who do you pray to?
That's an interesting one because I think God. Yeah. So I absolutely do. I've actually started reading the Bible recently, to.
Okay, so he asked, who do you pray to? And Andrew says, God. I want to unpack this because, I think in today's society, especially being, a young cat, I'm not too young, but praying to God is a very humbling and selfless thing to do. But I think a lot of people, and myself in the past, a victim of it too, praying to God for the things that you want versus acknowledging where you are in your life and asking for the things that you should be needing in your life. Now, God says, ask and you shall receive, but there's things that are in our secular and fleshly world that can distract us from that true one-on-one conversation that we can have with God through prayer. And this guy is this well-renowned scientist. Like, I'm curious what he prays about. Like he's probably facing battles that nobody knows about in his own personal life. And sorry, but science can't answer those troubles. When you're sitting down and you can't figure out why you're extremely depressed, now there's probably a scientific reason behind it, like this chemical did this chemical did that, but that's not going to help you get out of your depression. That's not going to help you get out of your anxiety. There has to be something that can cure your spirit, which is so important in our lives and what's happening in the world today. There's so many distractions. Social media is crazy. I mean, we're only in the United States or wherever you're watching this, but there has to be something that can cure our spirit, and that's God and Jesus and the gospel and the good news. So this is great.
To finish, I feel like it's my duty to learn and in some sense compare Old and New Testament.
And then he even said he starts reading the Bible. So like I said in the beginning, that is the snowball effect to God showing up in your life. Like this scientist, I don't know what his journey was, but I can imagine maybe somebody watching this or somebody out there right now, maybe they have no inclination of believing in God at all. But like in the beginning of the video, that small marveling of God's creation opens up that door for God to say, hey, I've been here the whole time. And then he says, I even started reading the Bible. So that happened to me as well. I was raised in the church, but I never understood God from man to man, one-on-one. And when I was a young adult, I was able to have that one-on-one relationship with him in my own time, in my own space, in my own solitude. And I became curious and started to read the Bible. And I've never looked back since. I don't read the Bible every day. I'm not going to sit here in front. But, I pick up the Bible as often as I can because it's fruit for my soul and my spirit. And science can't amplify that. It's only explanation that I believe science can give. But who wants to live life with all these explanations, with all the quote unquote answers, but have no substance to your spirit? I just can't, I just don't understand, why people would close their heart to that, so.
Mm-hmm. I'm really interested in the stories, but I'm fascinated by the story of us, right? And the story of everything. And so, but yeah, I pray out loud in the morning, sometimes again in the middle of the night if I wake up. Mm-hmm. And it's only recently that I've been doing this more often.
It's giving you peace?
Oh, my goodness. It's given me so much. It's given me peace. And, this is going to sound weird, and probably people are going to be like, what are you talking about? It works. Mm-hmm. It works.
You're right. He's right. It does work. Now, here's the trick, though. Because people are so caught up on trying to see God, physically, that hinders their faith just before it can even start to catch fire. So when he says it's bringing him peace, there's got to be a little inclination, or maybe a medium amount or a large amount of the word faith in his spirit. I got it on my arm. The word faith in his spirit. Because through faith in Jesus Christ, we are saved. Jesus died on the cross for all sins so we can have a relationship and a second chance with God to get into heaven. Like through Jesus, we get to God. That's the passageway. But when you first start praying, you might not feel anything. Something might not happen. You know, you might not have a crazy dream. So I encourage you to be patient with your journey and relationship with God. Like when you first meet somebody, like you're not telling them your social and your address, like you're feeling and testing the waters out. And you have to let God continue to show up. But it's kind of like that friend that you invite out and they never show up. You're not going to continue to invite them. You know, so if you don't let God show up to your party because you can't see him, then you're doing yourself a disservice by not letting him start to work in your life. So you have to open your heart and let your spirit become malleable to what he's trying to do in your life. We don't know what that plan is. It's his will. God's plans are always good plans for good hope and good future, not to harm us, but to give us hope. Don't quote me on it, but I don't even want to say the verse. I believe that's Jeremiah 29:11. Let me double check. I think it is. Yeah, Jeremiah 29:11. That's what I thought. Oh, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Then you will call upon me and pray to me, and I will hear you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and I will restore your fortunes and gather you from the nations and all the places where I have driven you, declares the Lord. I will bring you back to the place from which I sent you into exile. So there's some context behind that, but I will be found by you. Like when we open up the door to invite him in, there he is at the door. So that prayer is powerful.
There's a way in which certain things I was grappling with, you know.
See, like you said.
I just couldn't resolve. I couldn't do it. And it was all internal, and I just couldn't do it.
How were you trying to resolve these things? Like have an answer?
Yeah, discipline myself. I mean, it wasn't like I was super, undisciplined. I mean, obviously I have a lot of self-discipline, but,
yeah,
I always pray, I want to remove my defects of character. I want to, I certainly pray for other people. I mostly, these days I pray for the ability to really harness as much care and love for other people and for myself, something I haven't been that good at in my lifetime, in order to be able to put the best possible work into the world.
So he makes a great point, and that brings up another verse. And I'm reading from the English Standard. I have like 3 Bibles, but that brings up another really important verse. Like if you're struggling with something, or your way of doing things has been bringing you into circles, like you're not able to get out of this rut because the way that you are trying to solve this is not working, like you have to give it up and you have to let that little small mustard seed, again, allow God to show up in your life. We were not equipped to handle all the pain that we have in our life, in my opinion, without the source of somebody being able to change our spirit, which is God and his love and his grace. So there's a verse, Proverbs 3:5-6. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understandings. Seek his will or his plan in all you do, and he will show you which path to take. So Andrew is fighting these internal struggles that his science, his you know, I'm not sure if he's an MD or not, but maybe he has a PhD. His PhD ain't helping him solve the things he was grappling with. You know, his self-discipline, being able to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning every day, wasn't helping him solve the things that he was keeping him up at night. The beautiful thing is he's human and he has a spirit just like you and I do. And God is able to touch that spirit. And when you let go of your own way and let God do what he has already perfectly planned out for you, that's when his glory can be magnified, because you can remember back and it's like, yo, I was trying to do this for the longest time. That jank wasn't working. And then I always knew about God, I always knew about Jesus. And I finally just kind of let go of how I've been doing things, and things started to clear up through prayer. You know, maybe if you can't pray, have a friend pray for you. If you need prayer, send me a message, comment, DM me, do something. Instagram, the Conversations Podcast. But when that mustard seed is there, God is bigger than what you think cannot be solved or handled. So, I mean, Andrew Huberman's human. Like I applaud him for discussing that portion of his faith journey.
To really serve. Like I really see myself as serving higher power. Mm-hmm. Like I'm a conduit.
Right.
And the better I can do that, the better I'm serving. The better I'm serving.
And that's another thing. Like when you start to really lock in with Jesus and God and like the plan that is ironed out for you eons before your parents, your grandparents, great parents were created, God, people start to see you different. Like, dang, John, like, why are you so happy? Why do you move like that all the time? It's not because I got a good job or I drive a nice car or I have my own place. It's because I have the Holy Spirit in my soul and God in my spirit, letting him change my heart, like letting him like show up in my life to foster that love that I have for him, that he has for me. And that love is, let me enlighten you, him sending his own son to die for me. Like that changes my heart every day I wake up. And with Andrew saying that he wants to serve and love and care for people, that's what Jesus did. Even if they ridiculed him or judged him or called him out of his name or whatever the case is, like having that selflessness is so crucial to you coming into your purpose, because God gives you gifts, God gives you purpose to touch other people. And when you read the word and when you pray and when you allow God to come into your life, those things are amplified. Your spirit is amplified.
More I feel connected to humanity.
Do you think that with this, I don't know if you've always felt like this. It sounds like it's more of a newer feeling. But
Somewhat, although secretly.
Yeah.
Like in Santa Barbara, I'll just say there's this place, Sands Beach, down at the end of the beach, if anyone's ever been there. And I used to run down there once a week. I always did a long run, long for me, run on Sunday, minus a 72-pound rock.
Right.
And I would pray. And I just pray for, be honest with myself, be honest with others.
And that was years ago.
I was 18.
Oh, okay.
19, 20. So, and then, I've seen some hardship along the way. I mean, I would just mention that I've had 3 amazing scientific advisors. Harry shot himself 2 weeks after I told him we published a paper in Science. He said, come on down to Santa Barbara. It'd be great to take you out for pizza and celebrate. 2 weeks later, ate a bullet in the bathtub. Barbara died of cancer when she was 50. I'm friends with her daughter. I, saw her. She did have those 2 kids.
Yeah.
One's a neuroscientist.
Oh man.
At McGill. And she was like a mom to me. She died. I was speaking at her memorial. And then my postdoc advisor died. He was a pretty impressive guy in his own right. And so at one point I'm thinking like, what's going on? I'm the common denominator. Right. How am I picking these people? But they were amazing. And, I had some friends commit suicide, this kind of thing. And you live long enough, that's going to happen. People are going to go. That's just the reality. But there were times I'm like, it was dark. It was, like, where am I? Why me? And at those moments too, just accepting that there's a plan and it's happening for a reason and I don't know what it is, and just putting my trust in that allowed me to grieve those things properly and to really try and, I got the message, I got the download to take the lessons from them and just not waste a single day and to do things that I really felt mattered. So to me, it's always been linked to, sort of forces greater than me, certainly.
Does it feel like,
That was powerful. Your prayer doesn't have to be perfect. He mentions that in 18, 19, 20, he's out there on a run. Your prayer does not have to be this immaculate thing. Your prayer can be waking up and saying, thank you, God. Give me strength. Amen. If that's all you got, he hears you and he will give you strength. I look back, just the stuff that I've gone through in my life and where I am now, not status-wise or just, from that aspect, but the idea of I am still able to continue, that strength was given to me by God. There's no other way. I mean, I lost my dad in November. My father passed away from cancer. He was 56. He survived 30 days after his 56th birthday. I mean, I watched him go from 220 pounds down to 130 in a year. And the peace that I have from the damage that is in my life only makes me want to grapple more onto God, because when I'm in those dark moments, I don't feel alone. I don't feel like I have to do things alone. Granted, I want things to be fixed right away, but that's just not reality. Just like he says, like, people are going to pass, people are going to go. And like, scientific findings and reasonings cannot help you through those moments. Like, publishing the paper obviously wasn't enough for him and his scientific advisor. Like, the question is, what was he going through that made him take his life is another conversation. And there has to be something that can touch your spirit. Like, if you take anything away from this episode, let God touch your spirit. Let him touch your spirit.
Hearing all this, does it feel like once you've taken like this, a more, I don't know, intentional turn for being grateful and praying, you're not drinking since 2019, it seems like that's been in tandem with your success.
Absolutely. I always wanted to have a deeper relationship to God. I always wanted that. And I kind of was like, why don't I have that? Well, duh. That's like saying, I want to be fit. Why I'm not fit? Well, because you're not running, you're not lifting, you're not doing the things. It was like, and it was a couple of different people that kept showing up in my life, and they were doing it. And it was like, well, pray. And, I've learned, and I certainly try and do this, that a lot of prayer is about listening. And a lot of prayer is about you ask for things or listen for things. And then an hour later, 2 days later, you go, wait, like, it doesn't happen in the moment necessarily, just like fitness. I don't want to compare fitness. I don't want to trivialize prayer by comparing to fitness, but there's some parallels that are relevant. Yeah.
It's consistent work.
Yeah, it's consistent work. And then all of a sudden, like, things come up and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. That makes so much sense. Now, I think that the success of the podcast, first of all, I'm incredibly grateful for, incredibly grateful. But in many ways, I'm doing exactly what I was doing when I was that 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old kid. I'm learning and sharing. So it was always in me. And it always felt like this energy, this thing, like, it's like, how did I end up like this? How come all the other kids like don't have this? Mm-hmm. And how come sometimes it feels like a little bit of a, not a curse, but kind of a burden? Like, what do I do with this? And the deep satisfaction for me comes from acknowledging this is me. I've always been this way. It's not going to change. And that it's not coming from me. It's coming through me.
Right.
And I just want to do right by it. Mm-hmm. And I think we talked a little bit.
It's a gift, and you're honoring your gift.
That's right.
Essentially.
Yes.
So Andrew is on fire today, and he makes another great point that when you first start having those conversations with God, a lot of people are over anticipating this crazy experience to happen. And you might not have a crazy experience. You might not get in a catastrophic event or traumatizing event and witness God. That might not be how he shows up in your life. But faith, when you pray and you invite God into your life daily, even when it's hard, we're human, it's hard to do it. The Bible sits at your nightstand every night. And those moments do happen, but it might come through a song. It might come through a person. It might come through a conversation. It might come through a dream, maybe. So he makes a great point. I agree with that so much because, yes, prayer is thankfulness, gratitude. It's selflessness, it's vulnerability, but it's also listening. Because if you ask, but God's not a genie. Like, he's not here to fulfill all your wishes. Like, that's not what he's there for. That's not why he created everything. But we are held accountable to a relationship with him and his son. And when you think about relationships, what do healthy relationships have? Conversation, collaboration, exchange, and listening. Like, I know if I didn't listen to the person I'm with, if I didn't listen to her, I wouldn't understand her. I wouldn't know her cues on when she needs help or when she needs me. And if you don't listen to God after or during or when you're praying, or just in your life in general, you're not going to be able to pick up on those cues like, oh, snap, like, my self-worth has been at an all-time low. I'm listening to this song, and it's telling me about how I'm worth it. Like, you have to let that stuff change your heart. And Andrew says it perfect. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yes. Well,
and I feel like if we're honoring our gifts, we're rewarded.
Absolutely. And I think one of the biggest rewards recently comes from, and we talked a little bit about this on the mountain today. It's like, for me, the sweet spot that I finally get steady glimpses of is being loving, but also realistic. Mm-hmm. Like you can be so loving that you lose touch with.
Jesus was like that. He was loving, but very realistic. He didn't let people walk over him. He when you look in the Bible and you look at the red text, which is when Jesus is talking, he's very kind. Even when he's correcting somebody, he's very kind, doesn't bash them, doesn't make them feel like crap. But when you have characters like the enemy, the devil he speaks in the Bible. They call him the accuser often in the Bible. And when he speaks he's very fast, like rushing, like trying to pop in and pop out really quick. Or like just there's like animosity or like tension. You can feel it when you read it. It's a book. Like we all read books. Like you can understand, you know, when somebody's upset by knowing how to read. So, I mean, he's right. Like the gratification of life, and this has taken a long time for me to notice, is not from what you have. It's from what is done inside of you because of your past experiences and how you treat people and treat yourself after that experience has happened. That is when people say, holy crap, why are you so the way you are? And then you can say, 5 years ago, I was struggling. I was struggling with addiction. I was struggling with whatever it is. I had a hard time finding a relationship, and it was hurting me, and it was making my self-worth go down. But I listened. I knew God, just a tiny bit, just a mustard seed. I had the courage to pray and put my problems at God's feet and Jesus' feet. I listened, and my heart started to change. I started to look at life a little bit different. I started to look at life through God's lens versus secular world's lens and what they consider healthy for my mental, spiritual, and physical health. And that now you start to become a reflection of Jesus. And people look at you different. The right people become attracted to you because you walk through God, not through what you want. First, you get it, and then you start having a conversation with God. No, like, you're here, and everything you do is through him. So, Andrew, I applaud this. This is awesome.
The reality. Too much trust isn't good either. But you don't want to be unloving to yourself and others, because then you look at the world through cynical lens, and then you're not going to be doing your best work. So for me, it's all about being loving but realistic. Mm-hmm. And I think prayer helps me arrive there. It does many, many other things. I also just feel like our time here is limited, and I've been so blessed by people that have come along. I mean, those academic mentors meant everything to me, but so did the academic mentors that I didn't work for directly that helped me along. So did the high school football coach that taught me how to lift. So did Lex Friedman, you, Joe Rogan, right? Rich Roll, people who gave me the opportunity to talk on their podcasts about science. And then eventually, you know, we started our own podcast. So to me, it's this like beautiful ecosystem. And I never, ever think of myself as like, okay, like I'm here professing to people. I just love being a part of it. I also, just like when I was a kid, I'm crewed up with a bunch of great people, you know, and it's not all guys. Rhonda Patrick too, who, by the way, folks, people always say, who was first man in on public facing science and health education? Not first man, first woman. It was Rhonda. She was the first. Then came Matt Walker, me, some others, right? So I think the community of podcasters also, I feel like, wow, like this is as great as when I discovered neuroscience. And I actually feel more resonance with podcasters because it's really like of the love. You can't have a podcast that is worth anything in terms of its success or its content unless the person doing it loves that thing.
Right.
Like you can't, it's not journalism. It's not media. I mean, and there's a media component because it's public facing, but it's like you love bow hunting.
Yeah.
You love fitness. You love hammering away every day, right?
Yeah, right.
And so you're basically talking about the things that you would be doing anyway. And so am I, and so is Joe, and so is Lex, and so is Rich, so is Rhonda.
Yeah.
And
we're getting paid for this.
Right, exactly.
I do this for free.
Exactly. So if anyone out there wants to do a podcast or social media, what I would say is make sure that what you talk about is something that you really, truly care about.
That was amazing. Comment what y'all think. Andrew Huberman, you're awesome. I would love to sit down and talk about the brain because I used to study medicine back in the day, but my life changed and things went other ways, but I'm childlike like you with what you love and what I love. And I think we could have a great conversation. So if y'all made it down this far, I appreciate it. I hope you took something away from this episode. Stay tuned for, just more people being in different realms, loving, experiencing, learning, and becoming people of God, like children of God. We need something that can help our spiritual. And like I say, if you take anything away from this, let God change your heart. Peace.